When families get together for the holidays, they often plan fun activities to create lasting memories. Not knowing the devastating loss they would soon face, the Jones family decided to go calving at Nutty Putty Cave. This was what later happened. John Jones, an experienced caver, decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave near Salt Lake City with his family during Thanksgiving break. Although John hadn't been to this cave before, he had spent much of his youth calving with his brother Josh. Now married with a child and studying medicine, John had little time for caving. Nutty Putty Cave, suitable for beginners, offered interesting sections like the maze room and the slide, which were safe and accessible. However, the cave also had challenging areas like the birth canal and the otter crawl, which were tight and difficult to navigate. Nutty Putty had recently reopened after being closed due to incidents of cavers getting stuck, so a permit was now required for entry, with at least 2 experienced cavers per group. Josh secured a permit, and they planned to explore the cave on November 24, 2009. John's wife Emily, who is pregnant, stayed home with their 1-year-old daughter Lizzie while the in-laws visited. Meanwhile, a group of 11 family members and friends began exploring the main areas of the cave. John and his friend Josh took 2 friends to find more challenging tunnels. They were looking for a passage called the Birth Canal, known for being long and narrow and causing panic in even experienced cavers. John and Josh split up to find a tunnel. They chose a passage on the left and moved through a small tunnel for about 15 feet. The tunnel had different heights, so they had to twist their bodies to fit through the narrow spaces. The tight section of the cave was called the corkscrew. It was a challenging area to navigate, requiring small and flexible individuals to carefully maneuver through its narrow passages. After the corkscrew, the passage ascended for about 5 feet before bending sharply to the left over a rock ledge. A few years earlier, a 16-year-old named Brock Clark had become stuck in the corkscrew while trying to turn around. Despite being small and relatively light, it took rescuers 14 hours to free him. John, who was larger than Brock, found himself in the same spot and knew that turning around was not an option due to the tight space. Instead, he pushed forward to the ledge area and managed to squeeze over the top of it. Although it was a tight fit, John persevered and was able to see the passage open up below. By carefully maneuvering through the narrow space, he was able to continue on his way. John was moving headfirst downward, hoping to find a way to turn around. He didn't realize that no one had ever gone this way before. Even though he was in a tight and uncomfortable position, John stayed calm, believing that there would be an opening ahead. He thought he might be in an area called the Birth Canal, where other cavers had felt stuck, but eventually made it through. After passing through a narrow section, he started sliding toward the bottom of the tunnel. He was almost doing a handstand, struggling to push backward. Unable to turn around, he found himself upside down, gravity pulling his 200-pound body against his weakening arms. He shouted to his brother Josh, telling him not to follow but to go back. After discussing his options, they decided that moving forward to try to turn around was the best idea. John needed to get out of the vertical position and saw a hole in the floor ahead through his headlamp. This could lead to a larger space. Feeling a bit more hopeful now, he thought they would laugh about this adventure over Thanksgiving dinner. After making a slight turn, he headed toward the hole. Exactly how John got stuck in the tunnel is unclear. He may have slipped, hit his head, and wedged himself, or he might have misjudged the tunnel as a passage rather than a dead end. John ended up in a narrow opening at the bottom of the tunnel, just 18 by 10 inches, about the size of a laptop screen. He was nearly upside down at a 70 degrees angle, with one arm folded under his chest and the other pinned by a rock. Despite his efforts, he couldn't push himself back up the 5 feet to the shallow tunnel, with his legs wedged in an 8-inch wide space. John started calling for Josh again. Josh knew that John was in trouble because of the way he was yelling. Josh went back into the narrow space, moving feet first this time. He kept going towards John's voice and saw something alarming. John's legs sticking out of the rock as if he had been swallowed up. Josh moved as close as he could and tried to pull John up, but they both got tired and couldn't make any progress. Josh realized this was very serious and they needed professional help. They agreed that Josh would go for help while John stayed calm. Another family friend talked to John to keep him company. John remained trapped upside down for several hours, struggling to breathe and unable to move upward. Gravity kept pulling him against the tight walls, making him feel even more exhausted. When help arrived, the first cave rescuer, Susie Mata, reached John at 12:30 in the morning. John had been upside down for 3 hours. Susie, being 5'3", navigated the corkscrew area more easily. Precautionary ropes were tied to her ankles in case she got stuck. She reassured John they would get him out. Susie tied webbing straps around John's legs and fed them back to the pit's entrance. Multiple attempts to pull John out failed due to excessive friction on the ropes. They then decided to use a pulley system, which had worked before in a similar rescue. However, the tight tunnel made it difficult to transport equipment, and only smaller power tools could fit. Each pulley took a long time to install, with only one person able to assist at a time. Rescuers consoled John, talked with him, and shared stories. John, a devout Mormon, prayed and sang to find solace in the difficult situation. John spent the night upside down and was showing signs of the body's limitations in that position. The human body isn't designed for prolonged upside-down positioning. Normally, the heart pumps blood forward, with valves preventing backward flow, balancing pressure and gravity. John's body had been fighting gravity for over 12 hours. This caused fluid pressure to build in his brain and lungs, and toxins to accumulate due to poor circulation. His organs pressed on his lungs, making each breath exhausting. Fluids were building up in his lungs, his breathing slowed, and he was completely spent from the night's efforts. John's condition worsened rapidly, leaving the rescuers feeling trapped and exhausted. Despite the challenging conditions in the cave, they managed to set up a wired telecom system so that John could speak with his wife for support. Finally, at 4 o'clock that day, the team was able to use pulleys to slowly move John inch by inch out of the narrow opening in the cave. By this time, John's legs were in excruciating pain. A rope had been tied around his legs for hours, and they were completely blue with no discernible pulse. Yet each tug caused John to call out to stop as his nerves were ultra-sensitive. They paused to give him a moment to gather himself, then tried again. It seemed to be working. John was finally being pulled up out of the hole. He was raised enough for Ryan to look down, make eye contact, and pass down a tube to drink Gatorade. This effort was extremely slow, and everyone was exhausted. Ryan was squeezed in a tunnel just 12 inches high, with his head near John's legs. Though they made some progress, they were no closer to getting John out. His legs were hitting the low ceiling above the tunnel, making it impossible to twist them into the passage. John had no control over his legs after 19 hours upside down. The rescuers were considering breaking his legs to get him back into the passage because time was running out. Then, in a sudden moment of blinding pain, Ryan blacked out. When he came to, he was bleeding heavily and confused. The rope holding the pulley to a natural arch in the cave broke, whipping the carabiner and pulley into Ryan's face, causing facial damage and a concussion. Ryan had to be quickly taken out. John was back where he started, completely wedged in the tunnel, with circulation to his arms cut off and his legs completely dead. He couldn't help free himself in any way. This moment marked the beginning of John's final demise. Ryan was sent to the hospital, and John's father, Dave, took his place in the passage. It took an hour to re-establish the pulley lines. Dave tried to tie a rope around John's body, but couldn't get it past his wedged torso. During Dave's time with John, he was unresponsive. This entire operation required John's help to effectively rescue him. There was no way to lift his 200-pound, 6-foot frame without him pushing and leveraging himself in some way. In Dave's effort to tie up John, he got himself stuck for about 15 minutes. The desperate effort to save John put both his son and himself in danger. Once Dave managed to push himself back into the 12-inch tunnel, he was exhausted and had to leave. Brandon Coles took his place and brought in the telecom system so John's family could talk to him. John's wife, Emily, expressed her love and told him to take a break and rest. She still believed he would come out, but Brandon could see what she could not. John was no longer responsive. For several hours, John had shown no signs of life. The rescue team gathered in the pit area inside the cave to discuss the situation. A medical professional was needed to confirm John's condition. A paramedic was sent into the tight section to confirm the suspicions. At 11:56 on Wednesday, November 25th, John Jones was pronounced dead. The rescue teams had worked for 24 hours straight to try to free John, but his upside-down position made it impossible. John had survived an extraordinary 27 hours in an inverted position, which is 3 times longer than what was predicted as possible. The 6 rescue personnel who reached John were heroic. They placed themselves in a portion of the cave that was unmapped and full of risks. They were selfless, maintained a calm demeanor, and never gave up on an impossible rescue. After determining that recovering John's body was impossible, he was left to rest in Ed's push section of Nutty Putty Cave for eternity. The entire cave system was closed off with concrete, never to be explored again. A plaque was placed to commemorate the life of John Jones. Jones raised profound questions about perseverance, risk-taking, and the limits of human endurance. What emotions did John's story evoke in you? How do you think such tragedies can be prevented in the future? If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your engagement helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Thank you for watching.